After losing his wife to illness, Cowboy Ethan Carter raised his 8-year-old son Noah alone on a struggling ranch in the Wyoming Territory. Every day was a battle against debt, harsh weather, and loneliness. Just over the hill lived Clara Whitmore, a quiet widow whose late husband had died in a ranch accident 3 years earlier. Unlike everyone else, Clara spent every spring planting hundreds of bright sunflowers across a ridge that seemed too rocky for crops. The townspeople whispered she was wasting good land. Ethan secretly agreed. "Pretty flowers don't feed cattle," he muttered whenever he rode past. One afternoon Noah wandered into Clara's field while chasing a butterfly. Instead of scolding him, Clara smiled warmly and handed him a sunflower seed. "Plant hope before you need it," she said. Noah loved visiting her after that. Ethan remained cautious. He thanked Clara for watching his son but kept his distance, convinced she was simply lonely. One evening, an old trapper stopped by Ethan's ranch. "You see those sunflowers?" the old man asked. Her husband planted the first row years ago after surviving the Great Blizzard. "Those flowers always point toward the safest valley." Ethan laughed politely. "Flowers can't save lives." The trapper simply nodded. "Maybe not, but they can show people where to go." Winter arrived earlier than expected. The first heavy snow buried the hills, and weather signs hinted that something far worse was coming, the biggest cattle buyer of the season arrived just before the storm warning. If Ethan missed the sale, he could lose the ranch. Ignoring the dark clouds, he drove his cattle across the hills with Noah riding beside him. Meanwhile, Clara noticed something frightening. Her sunflowers, though dry and brown, all leaned sharply toward the eastern valley. Exactly as they had before the legendary Great Blizzard. She hurried into town warning everyone. "The storm will be worse than people think." Most ignored her. Late that afternoon the sky turned black. Snow fell sideways. Within minutes Ethan couldn't see his own horse. The cattle scattered. Noah disappeared into the white storm. Panicked, Ethan screamed his son's name until his voice cracked. Far away, Clara climbed the ridge despite the freezing wind. She looked at her sunflower field. Every stalk bent in the same direction. She saddled her strongest horse and followed the line of flowers toward the valley. Deep inside the blizzard she heard a faint cry. "Noah!" She found the frightened boy sheltering beside a fallen tree and wrapped him in heavy blankets. But Ethan was still missing. The storm had only grown stronger. Clara knew she couldn't reach town without finding Ethan first. Holding a lantern close, she followed the rows of frozen sunflower stalks. Though covered in snow, they marked the safest route because her late husband had planted them along an old ridge that stayed above hidden ravines and drifting snow. At last she spotted Ethan's horse trapped in deep snow. Ethan himself lay nearby, exhausted and barely conscious after searching for Noah for hours. With great effort, Clara revived him and pointed to Noah, who was safe. Tears filled Ethan's eyes as he hugged his son. Together they followed the sunflower trail to an abandoned ranger cabin that Clara's husband had once restored for emergencies. Inside they lit a fire and waited through the night while the blizzard raged outside. Clara finally shared the truth. Years earlier, her husband had nearly died in a similar storm. After surviving, he planted sunflowers every spring to create a living landmark that would guide travelers even after the flowers had withered. Their sturdy stalks remained visible through winter snow, marking the only safe path across the dangerous hills. Ethan realized he had judged her without ever asking why she cared so deeply for those flowers. "They were never decorations," he whispered. "They were promises," Clara replied. When dawn broke, the storm had ended. But the real change had begun in Ethan's heart. The rescue became the talk of the county. Everyone learned that Clara's sunflower trail had saved Ethan, Noah, and several stranded ranchers who later followed the same path to safety. The town that once mocked her now volunteered to help plant even more sunflowers before spring ended. Ethan sold what remained of his cattle and slowly rebuilt his ranch. This time he wasn't alone. He and Noah spent weekends helping Clara prepare the fields. Noah proudly planted seeds beside her, repeating the words she had once taught him. "Plant hope before you need it." As the seasons passed, friendship grew into love. One warm summer evening, surrounded by thousands of blooming sunflowers glowing beneath the setting sun, Ethan knelt on one knee. "These flowers saved my son, and they saved me too," he said. "Clara, will you marry me?" With tears of joy, she answered, "Yes." The entire town gathered for their wedding in the sunflower field. Instead of expensive decorations, the golden blossoms stood as symbols of faith, courage, and second chances. Years later, travelers crossing the valley always recognized the endless rows of sunflowers. They knew they marked safety, kindness, and a family who never forgot the lesson that changed their lives. Sometimes the things that seem ordinary are the very things that save us when the storm finally comes.